NHL players are taught to be violent and daring right from the moment they step foot on the ice. But when you start beating your teammates in the locker room and having affairs with your coach's wife, you're probably out of line. Here are the worst locker room fights in NHL history. Number 10. Dion Phaneuf. Perhaps it isn't the players, but rather coach Mike Keenan. Keenan was diagnosed with another locker room cancer after his public spat with former teammate Brendan Shanahan while both were with the St. Louis Blues. This time, as coach of the Calgary Flames, Keenan had to cope with a divided dressing room. Dion Phaneuf, it appears, was the primary cause of the schism. According to reports at the time, Phaneuf and teammate defenseman Robin Regehr had some severe off-ice troubles. That antagonism off the court translated into a lack of communication on the ice, resulting in numerous blown assignments and poor overall play. According to rumors and an interview with Keenan, there was physical fighting in the locker room between Phaneuf and Regehr, which would definitely cause some concerns within the club. Following the season, the Flames chose to blow it all up and start over, dealing with many of the players engaged in the locker room schism. Number 9. Doug Gilmore. Allegedly, according to numerous former teammates, Gilmore was a bit of a diva in the locker room, and according to the Los Angeles Times, he was allegedly accused of having sex with his 13-year-old babysitter. It's a shady narrative, and the grand jury finally decided not to indict him, so in the eyes of the law, he's innocent. In the opinion of others, no, not so much. The claim, though, was enough to have him deported from St. Louis right away. The Blues dispatched him to the Flames for a box of Twinkies, a carton of smokes, and a cold six-pack, we believe. Gilmore moved on to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs, where he solidified his reputation as a prima donna. Number 8. Alexei Yashin. It's not often that a team's crowd stands up and uniformly screams no when a player with a serious offensive punch becomes available. That's what happened when the New York Islanders were considering re-signing Alexei Yashin during the 2011 season. It could be because many people saw Yashin as a major underachiever, someone who got a big fat wage and then stopped trying, and Islanders fans would be aware. Yashin had been a part of the team since a trade brought him to New York for the 2001-2002 season, and he played for the Islanders until the 2006-2007 season, never displaying the scoring punch he'd shown while with the Ottawa Senators. He was widely regarded as a locker room cancer who alienated his colleagues while putting in no effort. Islanders fans are relieved that the trade did not go through and that Yashin was not brought back to wreck their locker room for another season. Number 7. Derek Sanderson. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, Derek Sanderson was one of the NHL's brightest young talents. Bobby Orr scored one of the NHL's most famous goals during the Boston Bruins' unforgettable Stanley Cup win in 1969-70, their first in over 30 years, but it was Sanderson who set him up for it. He was famous, a star, and when he signed a $2.6 million contract with the Philadelphia Blazers of the NHL's rival league, the World Hockey Association, he became the world's highest-paid athlete. Sanderson's stint with the Blazers was a fiasco due to his attitude and injuries, which limited him to just a few games. The team had had enough and brought him out of his contract and fired him. Back in the NHL, Sanderson had stops in Boston, New York, St. Louis, Vancouver, and Pittsburgh, and in each of those cities he divided the locker room with his attitude and his developing drug and alcohol addiction. He retired during the 1977-78 season, leaving him penniless and destitute. Sanderson was able to overcome his demons and turn his life around thanks to former teammate Bobby Orr, who paid for his therapy. Number 6. Eddie Shack. It's not good for your reputation when your own teammate says he's not sure whether you irritate the opposing team or your coaches more. However, this was not the case with Eddie the Entertainer Shack. That former teammate, Dennis Hextall, noted that Shack was different and said, "I think if Eddie would have committed to hockey and less showboating, he would have been a better player. He enjoyed being in the spotlight, but he was gifted." That could explain why, during the course of his 20-year career, Shack played for 6 different teams. Following a 7-year run in Toronto, the entertainer traveled around the league for a decade, striking his teammates as hard as his opponents. He could never stay in one place for too long because his attitude quickly wore thin with many people. Shack left a trail of divided locker rooms and bitter feelings in each town he traveled to until ultimately hanging up his skates in 1975. Number 5. Keith Tkachuk. Tkachuk was regarded as a top goal scorer in the NHL, and with 2 seasons in the mid-90s in which he scored 50-plus goals, it's simple to see why. Tkachuk, aside from those 2 seasons, never came close to matching his scoring prowess and proved to be more of a headache than anything else. Tkachuk was notorious for his large ego, his pouting tantrums, and his lack of effort when things didn't go his way or he wasn't satisfied with something. Many feel he played a significant role in driving fan favorite Chris King out of town after the former Winnipeg Jets relocated to Arizona to become the Phoenix Coyotes. Tkachuk had a hugely overstated reputation, and that reputation was what inflated his ego to the breaking point. Many in the Jets-Coyotes locker room found his ego and attitude to be unbearable. Unlike Keith, we don't think you're unbearable at all, but you might want to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Number 4. Ilya Bryzgalov. Ilya Bryzgalov was formerly regarded as one of the NHL's top goalkeepers. As a member of the Phoenix Coyotes, Bryzgalov averaged more than 30 victories per season while maintaining a GAA under 3.0. While those Phoenix teams weren't terrific, certainly not good enough to win the Cup, they weren't bad either. Following the 2010-11 season, the Philadelphia Flyers lavished him with riches and attracted him to the city of brotherly love, and the sigh of relief could almost certainly be heard from there. Following his departure, rumors about Bryzgalov's diva attitude and controversial presence began to circulate. It came to a head the first time the Coyotes were getting set to face their former goaltender for the first time, and was summed up nicely by Derek Morris, who said, "We're actually glad. First of all, I'm glad he's gone because the guy we brought in has done a great job and fitted in really well, made our team even closer." There was some hostility with Bryz at times. Number 3. Shane Corson. The Toronto Maple Leafs, one of the NHL's longest-suffering franchises, had something cooking in the early 2000s. They possessed one of the best players in the NHL in Alexander Mogilny and a supporting cast of players who, under coach Pat Quinn, were consistently making long postseason runs. Unfortunately for the Leafs, they also possessed a guy named Shane Corson, who was supposedly head over heels in love with Mogilny's wife. So much so that the two allegedly met on a regular basis so Corson could teach her how to put the puck in the net. When knowledge of the affair spread, the locker room was unsurprisingly shattered, with the majority of the players siding with Mogilny and Corson's brother-in-law, Darcy Tucker, standing up for Corson, ostensibly out of obligation. Mogilny took a brief leave of absence until Corson was traded, which he did, but it marked the beginning of the Leafs' descent back into oblivion. Number 2. Mike Ribeiro. During his stint with the Phoenix Coyotes, Ribeiro earned a reputation as a locker room cancer. Some blame his temperament on his divorce from his wife and being separated from his children, while others claim he's just an egotistical whining crybaby who believes he's better than everyone else. It's a reputation he developed during his time with Montreal and Dallas, and it's only been reinforced by his year in Phoenix. Whatever the case may be, though, wherever the truth may lie, Ribeiro's notoriety was enough to prompt Nashville Predators GM David Poile, upon signing him to a one-year deal, to proclaim, "There is no tolerance for off-ice concerns. This is certainly his last chance." It's a little harsh to criticize a person before he even steps through your door, but that's what having a reputation for divisiveness and the ability to split a locker room like Ribeiro was doing will get you. Ribeiro appeared to be keeping his nose clean until allegations of sexual assault surfaced from an event in 2012. Number 1. Sean Avery. Sean Avery is a figure that almost every hockey fan and player can unite against. Nobody has ever been better at getting under people's skins and aggravating everyone, and everything seemed to come easy to him. While Avery likely believes that he was simply doing his job by shaking things up and trying to throw other people off their game, the reality that people on his own team despised him shatters that argument. He had an ego that was out of proportion to his actual skill set, and he walked about with a smug air about him. The only thing more shocking than Avery's 10-year NHL career is that no one attempted to knife him with a skate. Nobody was surprised when Avery announced his retirement at the end of the 2011-2012 season. If you want more awesome NHL content, watch this video about the longest suspensions in NHL history.